What's up guys, Darius in here, and this is something new that I want to do for this channel. I'm not sure what I'm going to call this video series quite yet, but I know that I'm going to upload these with every single adventure. So what this is basically a sort of episode recap, if you will. I want to use this opportunity to talk a little bit about my thought process and the creation of the narrative of the story. How did I create the story? Where did I get like all this information? How did everything come to exist? I also maybe want to use this potentially, I don't know, to discuss in more detail some aspects of the story of the video or anything that I feel that wasn't properly discussed maybe in the video, or just anything in general that I might want to discuss. I want to use this as that opportunity. And also I want this to serve as a sort of closure, I guess, to conclude this chapter. Like, it was a great story. We had great choices. You guys succeeded. You guys completed the quest successfully. And I want to use this as an opportunity to just wrap it all up, you know, and get us ready for the next adventure. So that's kind of what I'm going to do in this video right now. If that's of interest to you, then, well, keep watching. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is the creation of the story, my thought process. How did the story came to be? The first thing I want to mention is that in the past, when I used to make these vlogs and knowledge episodes, the history episodes, I started doing mythology, more specifically Greek mythology. And I started with the origins, how the Greek mythology got started. Then I moved on to Zeus, Poseidon, and I had planned to do Hades. But then I switched to my new show, to Quest of History, and I never got to that. I started the Babylon story with Nebu, and then the Egypt story with Onos. So Hades and the Greek underworld had never been done. So then I'm like, okay, I want to do something with Hades and the Greek underworld in this new format, and use this new format as a way to explain who Hades was, what the Greek underworld was, and give you guys a sort of mini history lesson while you're playing a game and trying to successfully complete an adventure. So that was my starting point. I knew I wanted to involve Hades and the Greek underworld. So then I started getting to research. I was first researching about the Greek underworld, what it was. I learned that it was comprised of 3 general levels. Like, there was more to it than that. There was more levels, more places you could go to. But in general, you had 3 places. You had the Elysian Fields, which were at the top. That was like the heaven. Then you had the Asphodel Meadows, which is where everybody went to, the neutral realm. And then you had Tartarus, which was way below. I also learned that Hades personally loved to make sure that nobody gets out from the underworld. So that proved to be a problem, because I realized that nobody gets out from the underworld. Like, there were a few exceptions, like Heracles, for example, Orpheus, Odysseus, but mortals in general do not escape from the underworld. And originally I planned to maybe do something like the main character dies, like you die, and then you have to go into the underworld, and then you have to find a way to escape. But that did not work. So I'm like, okay, I need a new strategy. We need something else to do in the underworld. And then I started researching who came into the underworld, who got out successfully. I learned about Heracles. I learned about his 12th labor specifically, which was to defeat Cerberus from the underworld and then get him out from there. So I knew that he had done it successfully. So I'm like, maybe I can use this as a choice option for the choice at the end, which eventually I did. Then I learned about Theseus and Pirithous through Heracles' 12th labor. In the Wikipedia article, it said that he saw the 2 best friends and he tried to rescue them, and then one of them, Pirithous, remained there, stuck. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What are their stories? So I went to read about Theseus and Pirithous and found the whole story about how they wanted wives to marry, and Pirithous wanted Persephone. And I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. So Pirithous is our guy. Pirithous is stuck in the underworld. Theseus got out. Obviously, they were best friends. Obviously, he wants to get his best friend out. That's the quest giver. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting there. Then I started researching Persephone. Who was Persephone? I learned of her story. I learned that she was raped by Hades and that she was in the underworld, stuck in there. Even though Zeus and Demeter and all the other gods wanted her out, she couldn't be fully out because she had eaten fruit from the underworld, which made her bound to be stuck for 1/3 of the year. Now, I found it very cool, the concept of having somebody be bound to the underworld for 1/3 of the year. That's kind of like a partial success, which really attracted me. So I'm like, okay, I want to do something. I want to play on that and maybe create my own mythology through that, which I did, right? If you chose Persephone, then what you got was that you were out of the underworld, but for 1/3 of the year, you got the same sentence as Persephone. So from there, I had my choices. I had Heracles, I had Persephone. I saw that both had reasons for you to pick them, right? Heracles came into the underworld, he defeated Cerberus, and then he successfully got out. So there was incentive to pick Heracles. There was also incentive to pick Persephone because she was stuck in the underworld against her will, even though she was the wife of Hades, which arguably puts her in an advantageous position. She was stuck in there, and Zeus and Demeter and potentially some of the other gods were not happy about this current arrangement. And I specifically said those exact words in the video. Demeter, Zeus, and even Persephone were not too happy about this current arrangement. My goal with that was to give you, well, to give you a hint and to let you know that it was a numbers game in a way. Because in terms of the Greek gods, like Zeus is the most powerful one. Then there's Poseidon and Hades, they're kind of equal. But for the most part, most Greek gods besides Zeus are equal. So it's not like one god is gonna potentially be stronger than the other. Like they're usually gonna be equal depending on the situation, of course. So that's why I said Demeter and Zeus, because if you went with Persephone, you had the help of other gods, which would be enough to overcome Hades in a fight or whatever, right? So that's why you had to pick Persephone, and that's kind of where this whole choice came to be. And I wanted to make this choice as hard as possible. So I'm really happy that I found these two people, these two separate people, and I found incentives to vote for each, which was cool. And then, you know, I researched more into Heracles, what would have happened if you chose him. I tried to be as historically accurate as possible. I found his link with Theseus and the link between Theseus and Minos, who then became a judge at the underworld. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play something off of that. And then I had to find a way to avoid you going to the judges if you chose Persephone, because ultimately going to the judges would mean that you failed. So then I had Persephone, since she was in the underworld, I had her watch you and then prevent Hades from sending you there, which is why you never made it to the judges in the Persephone ending. And ultimately that's what led to you being rescued and to you successfully completing the quest. And then I wanted to give you guys a very strong weapon, a replica of Poseidon's trident, just to make it worth it that you had now given up your life. You had now lost 1/3 of your life forever in the underworld. That was sort of my general idea with this entire video. And it's cool, like I really enjoy making these videos. Like my whole structure is I start researching people, events, and then like I just click on links in Wikipedia and other websites, and I try to find as much information as I can. Once I have these like data points everywhere, then it's simply a matter of connecting the dots. Who was linked to who had an influence on who. Oh, I can use this person to say this, and then if this person does this, like that's how I found everything, and I just built my own custom story in that. And I wanted to make you guys, the main character, a magician, because this was dealing with like the Greek mythology where you were going into the underworld. So it made sense for you to be like a magician, because magicians use spells and they're kind of in that mythology world. And yeah, I guess that's kind of it. My most interesting part of this story is mostly how everything is connected. I really like the fact, I really like Minos and the Minotaur and that whole story with Theseus, and the fact that Theseus had to kill the Cretan bull that Heracles didn't because he moved on to his 8th labor. Like I really enjoyed learning about that. It was very cool. And there's more to this story that I haven't talked about. Like for example, why were the Athenians sending people to Crete for them to be eaten by the Minotaur? That's a very interesting story that I didn't really talk about in the video. I'm not going to mention it here, but you're free to go research it if you will. Then I also really enjoyed Persephone's side of the story. It was really cool how each ending had like it completely branched off and you completely had to deal with different people. And once again, there's a lot more to Persephone's story that I haven't talked about. Specifically how Demeter was like on the hunt for her for many years, and the things that she did to try to find her daughter, but she couldn't until eventually she brought on a drought to the Greek people, and the Greek people complained to Zeus, and Zeus had to step in. That to me was very interesting. I love Greek mythology. I love this entire world. It was very, very cool to have an opportunity to play with Hades, to play with his dialogue, to create his own dialogue, to create Zeus's dialogue as well, and to create this whole narrative of this story behind it. I don't know, I just found it really, really awesome. So that's it, guys. That was my quick little episode recap, if you will. I hope that you've enjoyed this adventure a lot. I hope that you've enjoyed this recap. I'm currently working on the next adventure. It's a different era. It's a completely different vibe. It still talks a little bit about mythology, a different kind of mythology, something that's very, very popular before. I have covered it in Vlogs of Knowledge in the past. So if you want to go and look in my previous videos, you can. We're going to take a unique take. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want it to be a surprise, but we're going to take a unique perspective on a very popular myth. We're going to go to the very early times of that myth, and you're going to essentially have to have to enable that myth to happen. If you fail the quest, you prevent that person in the myth from doing all the great things that that person eventually did. So it's very important. This quest, it's very cool. The stories that I have are very cool. The choices as well are very cool, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. So that's it. That's one adventure done. Let's look forward to the next one. It's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be really awesome, and I'm super happy to have you guys on board. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name has been Darius, and I will see you in the next adventure. Ciao.